My spouse decided to file for divorce after an incident that occurred at a party. This moment was extremely painful for me. Reaching out to the Reddit community seems unusual to me. However, I feel the need to share my story. My name is Morgan. Up until recently, I was convinced that my life was filled with everything I needed. I was happily married to William for 3 years. Our life was like a dream that we started dreaming about back in our high school days. If someone had predicted this turn of events to me a few months ago, I would have thought that person was either joking or wrong. Now, however, my worst nightmare had become my reality. William and I met back in first grade, a time when the world seemed limitless and love seemed to be the answer to everything. He was a shy and intelligent student, and I was the outgoing one. Despite our differences, there was an instant connection between us and we soon became inseparable. I still remember our first date as if it were yesterday. It was a warm spring day, and William, gathering all his courage, invited me to a local diner for milkshakes. I accepted without the slightest hesitation, feeling excitement and anticipation. This date turned out to be truly magical. We took a cozy corner and while sipping our milkshakes, we chatted about a variety of topics. William turned out to be a wonderful conversationalist. He made me laugh like no other. We shared our hopes, dreams, and fears. As the sun began to set, we didn't want to part. Walking hand in hand through the park, we immersed ourselves in each other so much that the whole world seemed like just a backdrop. Under the starry sky, I realized that I had found a truly special person. From that moment on, we became not only lovers but also best friends, trusting each other unconditionally. Our mutual understanding and desire to spend every minute together made our second date as unforgettable as our first. William threw me an unexpected surprise by arriving at my house with a picnic basket. He had planned to spend a romantic day in the park, taking along fruit sandwiches and my favorite chocolate chip cookies. His caring gesture made me smile, and we headed to the park holding hands. There we found a secluded spot under a majestic oak tree and spread out a blanket. The sun was shining brightly and a light breeze rustled the leaves. Throughout the day, we swapped stories from our childhood, discussing our dreams and everything in between. Sitting next to each other, I felt a deep sense of calm and contentment. In that moment, I realized that William was the very special person I wanted to share my life with. After finishing our picnic, we went for a walk through the park, exploring its winding paths and enjoying nature. Our wandering led us to a pond with a small dock where William suggested we stop and admire the sunset. This moment was the perfect ending to our day. As I sat on the dock and watched the sky turn shades of orange and pink, I felt grateful for William's presence by my side. That date strengthened our bond and we have been inseparable ever since. On our third date, I truly began to fall in love with William. We were already friends and I had always felt a spark between us, but until that moment I couldn't imagine that our relationship could grow into something more. Sitting in a cozy cafe and enjoying coffee, William looked at me with his kind eyes and asked me to be his girlfriend. I was delighted by his proposal and, seeing the sincerity in his gaze, I realized that I wanted to be with him myself. When I happily agreed, we spent the rest of the day walking around the city holding hands and feeling like we were on top of the world. From that moment on, everything felt new. The world seemed changed, and I felt different, as if all the elements of my life had suddenly come together. On our fourth date, William and I decided to add something new and exciting to our relationship. Both of us loving nature, we went hiking in a nearby national park. The weather was beautiful, bright sunshine and a light breeze coolly blowing around us as we walked through the woods. We talked about everything in the world, reminiscing about our childhood and sharing our dreams for the future. At one point we found a gorgeous clearing with a stunning view of the valley below. Nestled on a large rock, William offered us a picnic he had prepared. It was something simple, fruit sandwiches and a bottle of wine, but the moment was filled with laughter and joyful conversations. We enjoyed each other's company and the tranquility of nature for hours. As the sun began to set, we reluctantly left the place and headed back to the car, feeling truly happy and fulfilled. This day will forever be etched in my memory as a moment of realizing the depth of my feelings for William and the uniqueness of our connection. William was easygoing, caring, and always made me laugh. We had so much in common, our interests, values, and life goals matched. I felt real around him. He accepted me with all my imperfections. As our relationship progressed, my love for him only deepened. I never imagined that I could care so much about anyone. Time spent with him was magical, whether we were on an exciting date or just relaxing at home watching movies. He made me feel loved and desired like no one else. When William proposed to me, I felt an inexpressible happiness. It became the happiest day of my life. I looked forward to the future, to build our home together, to create a family and to share every moment of life with him. Being by his side, I was confident that together we could overcome any challenges that life throws our way. We continued to fill our shared life with memories, discovering new places and trying something new, which made us even closer to each other every day. We supported each other in times of success and failure, rejoiced in accomplishments and cheered each other on in difficult moments. However, as is often the case, all good things come to an end at some point. Our path took an unexpected turn that neither of us could have foreseen. Now, as I think back to those times when life seemed simpler and love was all we needed, I can't help but smile as I recall our journey together from our first date to today. Our love has only grown stronger over time. William has become my rock, my best friend, and my dearest person. I am eternally grateful for his presence in my life and look forward to what the future will bring. Our story continued in college where we both attended the same university, working hard during the week and enjoying each other's company on the weekends. We made grand plans for the future, dreaming of getting married and starting a family, believing our journey together was perfect. After graduating from college, we both found jobs in our fields of study. William was successful as a computer programmer, due to his skills and the high demand in the high-tech industry. I took a job at a local company. The work wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. We moved into a modest apartment, which we filled with our dreams and aspirations, and began a new chapter of our life together. Life seemed good, we were happy, at least that's how it seemed to me. Looking back, I realized that I may have been too absorbed in my own world to notice the cracks appearing in our relationship. We kept going on dates, kept saying, "I love you," to each other every day, but something had changed. Perhaps the routine of our daily lives was the cause of the sense of monotony that gradually took over our marriage. My own doubts and fear of missing out on something more exciting and passionate began to take over. Our life became a comfortable but monotonous sequence of days filled with demanding work and efforts to maintain our household. Evenings were spent together watching TV programs or sharing our impressions of the day. Despite my deep feelings for William, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something, that I was hungry for new experiences and adventures. Life together had become too predictable, and I longed for new experiences, for the chance to feel alive again. I longed for thrills and uncharted horizons. Trying to suppress these desires, I persuaded myself that I was selfish, because I had a caring husband, a stable job and a cozy home. But my longing for new experiences grew stronger every day, and I began to feel a distance between myself and William, gradually losing interest in our usual activities together. I found myself thinking more and more about the fantasy of a life filled with unusual events and adventures. Thoughts of the possibility of making changes in our relationship and proposing the idea of an open relationship seemed tempting, although deep down I knew William would never accept such an offer. The desire to explore the forbidden, to break the monotony of our everyday life, awakened in me a sense of excitement I hadn't felt in a long time. I was aware of the risks associated with these thoughts, but I couldn't stop. The call of the unknown beckoned to me, promising excitement and passion that I tried to suppress. I tried to distract myself from those thoughts, focusing on my marriage and the life I'd built with William, but the desire for something more never left me, growing more insistent with each passing day. My weakness manifested itself in seeking validation and excitement outside of our relationship. I even created a profile on a dating app and went on a few dates, but never allowed things to progress to physical intimacy. Fear of being caught, fear of hurting William, and fear of losing everything we had built together held me back. The constant worry that someone might expose me or that my actions would somehow affect William led me into a dark period of doubt and insecurity. I found comfort in the anonymity of new places where I could act like I was alone, flirting with strangers, but when relationships began to escalate, I retreated, numb with fear. I realize now that my actions were a manifestation of a deeper internal problem. I was looking for something outside of our relationship to fill an inner void, realizing that nothing could replace what I had with William. As time went on, I grew more and more distant from William, despite his efforts to revitalize our relationship and add excitement to our lives. I couldn't shake off the feeling of boredom that enveloped me. William tried his best, organizing surprise dates, giving elaborate gifts, and suggesting new ideas for our intimate life. But no matter how hard he tried, I still felt like I was missing something. I realized that William was trying to compensate for my feelings of dissatisfaction and anxiety by making extra efforts to revitalize our life together. Despite his efforts, I couldn't escape. Could not escape the feeling that our life had lost its former brightness and become predictable. Guilt over these feelings depressed me. William was an excellent husband, loving and attentive, but even his care could not quench my longing for novelty and passion. As time went on, my sense of boredom and inner anxiety only grew stronger. Deep down, I realized that the blame for this lay with me. I should have talked openly with William about my feelings, suggested trying therapy or looking for other ways to add variety to our lives. But I didn't, letting my feelings deepen and slowly undermine our relationship. I became more and more detached, immersed in thinking and fantasizing about another life. I realized that I had been unfair to William. He didn't deserve to be treated this way by me. He was a kind, caring spouse who deserved so much more. However, I seemed unable to handle myself, trapped in wanting something more exciting, while feeling guilty about my desires. It was a vicious cycle from which I saw no way out. However, an opportunity soon came along that turned everything upside down. My friends and co-workers invited me to a party, and I decided to accept the invitation in hopes of dispelling my despondency. I had no idea where this decision would lead, opening the door to events I had previously never even dreamed of. Although I had always been social, I wasn't particularly close with co-workers until my best friends Emily and Jessica started working at the same company. We had all been friends since college, and their presence livened up my work days, which were previously just part of a monotonous routine. Now every day at work was more enjoyable, especially as the weekend approached. They offered to organize a party in honor of our mutual friend to which our close friends from college and high school were invited. I gladly accepted the offer as I felt the need for a break from the daily monotony. Having not seen my friends in a long time, I looked forward to the evening, bathed in anticipation of joyous moments. Sharing my plans with William, I found him understanding of my need for time away from home and his advice to savor the moment. In anticipation of the party, I paid special attention to my appearance, striving to look especially attractive for the occasion. The evening began with street food where we enjoyed each other's company, reminiscing about our school days and sharing news about our current situation in life. Our path then lay to a local pub where we indulged in fun and laughter. During the course of the night, my gaze fell on a man across the room who caught my eye with his good looks and intriguing charm. Smiles were exchanged between us, causing my excitement to grow. Encouraged by my friends, I overcame my hesitation and approached him. He introduced himself as Vincent and was exceptionally charming. Our conversation flowed easily, and soon we were laughing and enjoying each other's company as if we had known each other for a long time. Vincent joined our company, and we continued to enjoy the evening, deepening our conversations and laughing louder by the hour. I felt an irresistible attraction to Vincent, and soon we were exchanging kisses that gave me a sense of euphoria that I had long forgotten. The idea of doing something unpredictable and exciting was too tempting to resist. When Vincent offered to continue the evening at his apartment, I accepted without hesitation. My friends encouraged me, promising to support me and help me if I needed it. I now realized how wrong my decision had been that night, under the influence of alcohol. I let my guard down and committed an act that changed everything dramatically. In Vincent's apartment, I betrayed my spouse, allowing myself to forget everything for a moment. We spent that evening together watching a movie, and I felt free of obligations and worries. I was so immersed in the moment that I even forgot to inform my spouse that I would not be coming home. This selfish act, driven by a thirst for novelty and spontaneity, left deep regrets the next morning. The realization of the act struck me with unexpected force. I had betrayed my husband, and guilt, self-loathing, and despair overwhelmed me. Leaving Vincent's apartment, I felt humiliated and broken. Returning home, I was filled with anxiety about how to face my spouse after all that had happened. Upon returning home, my husband expressed surprise that I had not contacted him last night as promised. I had tricked him by telling him that I had stayed at a friend's house because I felt too drunk to drive. He seemed to believe my story and inquired about my night. I lied again, stating that it was great and that I missed him and our friends. The guilt from lying to him weighed heavily on me, but fear and embarrassment kept me from admitting the truth. I felt trapped, wavering between the desire to confess and the fear of losing him if I told the whole truth. I decided to hide the truth, hoping to just go on with my life as if nothing had happened. The guilt continued to plague me, especially when my husband had treated me so caringly and lovingly. Back at work, I noticed that my friends were acting strangely, but I tried not to pay much attention to it, blaming their behavior on the aftermath of the party. However, as I pondered their actions, I began to see signs that they were the ones pushing me to cheat. Doubts about their loyalty and influence over me began to grow. Guilt and shame for my actions increasingly overwhelmed me. It was hard to live with the truth. I found myself between two fires. I didn't want to deceive my husband, but I didn't want to lose him either. Trying to cope with the guilt, I tried to be especially kind to him, trying to compensate for my actions. But the more I tried, the more my husband seemed to drift away. As I tried to rebuild our relationship, the desire for spontaneity and novelty that had once beckoned me seemed to disappear. My life was back on track, and the excitement I had been chasing had faded away. My friends who had seemed so close were now estranged. Previously, I had felt as if my friends and even my husband were hiding things from me, creating a sense of alienation. Despite my best efforts to bring brightness and newness into our shared life, the distance between us only increased. I missed the days when every day brought something new and exciting, when stepping out of my comfort zone promised thrills. Now everything seemed monotonous and repetitive. I tried to discuss my feelings with my friends in an effort to recapture the lost magic, but they showed no interest, leaving me alone with my worries. My relationship with my husband suffered the most. We had once been inseparable, but now there was a chasm between us that I didn't know how to bridge. I tried to be more affectionate and attentive, but nothing could bring us back to our former intimacy. My husband was always busy with work or preoccupied with his own thoughts, and I felt I was losing him. I began to question everything, wondering if my life was doomed to mediocrity, always wanting more but never achieving it. I realized that something needed to change, but I didn't know how to break this vicious cycle of everyday life I found myself in. I missed being close to my husband, but couldn't figure out the reasons for his anxiety. Trying to hide my guilt and pretend that nothing had happened, I tried to move on with my life. but the truth always finds a way to show itself. One night a few weeks later, my husband took the unexpected step of making a reservation at a restaurant. He confessed that he felt a strain in our relationship and hoped the date would help us find our way back to each other. I felt excitement at the thought of the upcoming dinner with my husband, because such dates had become a rarity for us. I was working on the day of the dinner, so we agreed that we would meet after work and go to a restaurant. There were events at work that day that should have alerted me, but I was too preoccupied with my business to pick up on those signals. My friends, with whom I had begun to distance myself, approached me during my lunch break. We exchanged a few sentences and they asked about my husband. My response that he was fine surprised them. Their question about whether we were okay made me wonder, but they avoided specific answers to my clarifying questions. After work, I came home and we got ready for dinner. The first few minutes in the restaurant were awkward, but soon we both relaxed and started talking more freely. We talked about our busyness and how it had distanced us from each other. At one point, my husband gave me the opportunity to tell the truth, asking if there was anything I wanted to share. But I didn't find the courage to admit it and answered in the negative. After dinner, we headed home. However, as we got into the car, my husband took some papers out of the glove box and held them out to me. When I looked at the papers, I realized with horror that they were divorce papers. My heart sank and I felt an unbearable wave of emotion as I realized that my actions and decisions had led to irreparable consequences. I felt shock as my hands began to shake holding the divorce papers. Only one thought swirled in my mind: how could my husband know about my infidelity? When I looked at him, I saw that his usually cheerful face was clouded with sadness and a sense of betrayal. It was clear now, he had found out everything. My husband shared with me that he couldn't understand how I could betray our future together. He told me about a videotape he had, and my heart sank when he turned it on his phone. The footage showed me kissing a stranger in a bar. In that moment, I realized that my friends, who always seemed so supportive, had betrayed me by recording my act and sending the video to my husband. I was stunned by their actions and couldn't understand how they could have done this without my knowledge. My husband confirmed that they sent him the video that same night, giving me a chance to confess. He waited, hoping I would open up, but I couldn't. He made the decision to divorce, feeling he couldn't continue our future together after such a betrayal. I felt numb and realized the gravity of my actions that had destroyed my marriage and hurt the person I loved the most. My husband expressed his disappointment and hurt, but was not violent. He gave me 10 minutes to pack my things and leave the home we once shared together. My husband said he had already informed my brother of the situation before our dinner and asked him to help me pack my things. He also sent out a video to my parents and siblings explaining in detail what had happened. My brother was probably already waiting for us at home or was expected to arrive shortly. The situation seemed absurd, like it was a joke, but I was too shocked to react any other way. I cried and begged my husband to reconsider his decision, but he didn't take my words seriously. Upon arriving home, he reminded me of the 10-minute deadline. My brother had not yet arrived, so my husband decided to text him to confirm his location. I was to pack and carry my belongings out onto the porch. My husband was treating the situation in a cavalier manner, and I realized that any attempts at dialogue would be pointless. Checking my phone, I found messages from my parents and siblings expressing their bewilderment and disappointment at my actions. They were shocked and angry, with my parents urging me not to bother my husband and to return home where they would help me talk to him. This suggestion brought me some relief. After gathering and carrying my things out onto the porch, I soon saw my brother. My husband didn't show up to say goodbye, just closed the door in front of me. I had to return to my parents' house with my brother. The stay with my parents was difficult, despite their disappointment with my actions. They and my siblings supported me, advising me to give my husband time to reflect in the hope that he might forgive me and restore our relationship. Moving back in with my parents and commuting to work became my new routine after my husband forbade me from using the car he had purchased. His decision to leave me without transportation and to clean out our joint bank account, leaving me financially insecure, affected me deeply, emphasizing my dependence on him. Soon, my co-workers learned of my eviction from the house. During this period, I encountered the true attitude of my so-called friends who cruelly discussed my situation, adding to my misery. A week after moving in with my parents, I decided to leave my job. After contacting HR and not expecting much support due to the indirect nature of the comments and the fact that everything happened outside of work, I still decided to speak up. To my surprise, my supervisor was sympathetic and allowed me to leave without 2 weeks' notice. This act of support was small consolation during a difficult time in my life. After returning to my parents' home and being unemployed, I felt intense sadness and uncertainty. At times I feared I might fall into depression. My husband reminded me to pick up the divorce papers, but I refused to sign them. My parents advised me to wait, suggesting that my husband might reconsider. Despite his silence, I continued to hope for the possibility of repairing our relationship and started fresh. In my search for new opportunities, I turned my attention to telecommuting, finding some relief in that decision. Working from home seemed appealing to me, especially after feeling tired of interacting with others in light of the betrayal my friends had given me. In the back of my mind, I believed that had it not been for that fatal encounter, things might have turned out differently. During this difficult period, my mother-in-law expressed her disappointment in my actions. Being in despair, I tried to justify myself to her, saying that my adultery was due to alcohol intoxication and that in my sober mind I would never have taken such a step. To my surprise, she showed understanding and offered her help in talking to my husband, which stirred hope in me. My parents and mother-in-law decided to step in to help us mend our relationship. Although my mother-in-law was unable to join us in person, she promised to write to her son and try to convince him to forgive me. We traveled to my husband's house, hoping for a chance to dialogue. Despite his tentative lack of desire to communicate, he led us into the house and offered us a drink, which seemed like a reassuring gesture. However, despite my parents' efforts to discuss the possibility of forgiveness and my mistakes, my husband was adamant. He expressed that even if forgiven, he would not be able to forget what had happened and suggested that separation would be the best solution for both of us. He insisted that I sign the divorce papers to simplify the process for the two of us. According to him, cheating is an unforgivable act and every act carries consequences. Devastated, I couldn't hold back my tears, hoping they could touch his heart. He remained unfazed, however, expressing his disappointment that I had dragged his mother into the situation. This, he said, had called their relationship into question. He also emphasized that my condition that night could not justify my actions and condemned me for not paying attention to the actions of my friends who had documented my cheating. Again, he stated that signing the divorce papers would be the best way for both of us to move on with our lives going forward. Under the weight of the realization that I had caused William irreparable pain, I realized that there was no way to fix the situation. The only way out was to accept the consequences of my actions, sign the divorce papers, and move on. After gathering my strength, I apologized to William and promised to complete all the necessary formalities. His reaction to my decision was a mixture of surprise and relief. As I left his house, the feeling of heaviness left me. When I returned to my parents' house, I realized I needed to face reality. William would not take me back, and any illusions would only add to our pain. I explained to my parents that it was time to let William go, as prolonging this situation made no sense. William had always been a caring and devoted partner, but his stubbornness on matters of principle was unwavering. Realizing that his decision was final, I decided to sign the divorce papers myself and deliver them to him personally. Standing on his doorstep, I experienced mixed feelings of regret and sadness, but also the strange relief of realizing that I had accepted the situation. I handed him the documents, expressed my gratitude for the past years, and repeated my apologies. There were no tears or pleading. I realized it was over and I needed to accept it. I am now awaiting a court date, realizing that my chances of a favorable outcome are extremely slim, especially given the video evidence of my infidelity. My brother, being an attorney, explained that my case looks weak. He cannot represent me due to a conflict of interest, plus his specialty is not in family law. Nevertheless, I am grateful that the divorce terms proposed by William are not overly harsh. At this point, all I can do is accept the consequences of my actions and strive to move on. This experience has been a hard lesson for me that I will remember for the rest of my life. I hope that in time I will be able to forgive myself for the pain I have caused. That's why I'm sharing my story with strangers online, with the hope that it will serve as a cautionary tale for others. Don't take your loved ones for granted and treasure every moment you spend together. After all, you never know when it may be taken away from you.